Please raise your right hand and place your left hand on the Bible. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give the court in this case to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Could you just state your name and then spell your last name for the court?
My name is Chad Smith, S-M-I-T-H.
Where do you work?
I work at the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, commonly known as SLED. Specifically, I work in the firearms department at SLED's Forensic Services Laboratory in Columbia.
Could you just tell me briefly, what is SLED?
SLED is an assisting agency for state agencies that require additional manpower. We also operate a full-service forensics laboratory, so agencies throughout the state bring us evidence to be analyzed and examined, mostly for court purposes.
How long have you worked at SLED?
This November will be 17 years.
What's your current assignment there?
I'm a firearms examiner, and it was a forensic scientist position.
And have you been in that position the entire time you've been at SLED?
Yes, ma'am.
What is your educational background?
Well, I attended Clemson University, where I earned a bachelor's of science degree in biological sciences, and I worked for Clemson for several years before coming on board at SLED. When I started my training program at SLED, it's last several years. It involves extensive reading and studying. There are multiple examinations and tests given during that time. I also attended various classes and seminars, toured several firearms manufacturing facilities, and then later I helped the other examiners prepare their casework. At the end of the training, I received a comprehensive multi-part examination, which I successfully completed, and then I began to receive my own casework.
In addition to that exam that you passed at the completion of your training, do you also take regular proficiency exams?
Yes, ma'am.
How often do you take those?
We're on a cycle, so every year we take a certain discipline of our field.
And have you ever failed any of those proficiency exams?
Not that I know of.
So tell me, what does a forensic scientist in the firearms department do?
Well, our main responsibility is the examination of firearms, ammunition, and ammunition components, such as bullets and cartridge cases. The main goal is to try to identify if a particular bullet or cartridge case was fired by a specific firearm. We also do serial number restorations on firearms that have had their serial numbers obliterated. I also assist with the destruction of firearms that agencies throughout the state bring us to be destroyed.
Okay, let's turn our attention specifically to bullets. What are the different parts of a bullet called?
Well, if you're referring to what a cartridge is called, a cartridge, you start with a cartridge. A cartridge is an unfired round of ammunition. A lot of people just call it a bullet, but you see a lot on television, but technically that's not correct. We're big on terminology in our department. So if you start with an unfired round of ammunition, it's basically made of several components. You have the cartridge case, which is basically the container for all the other parts. The gunpowder goes inside the cartridge case. At the top of the cartridge case is open, where the bullet, which is the actual projectile, that's seated at the top of the cartridge case. At the bottom would be the primer area. The primer is what's struck by the firing pin of the firearm, which basically causes a controlled tiny explosion, and that ignites the gunpowder, and then volume of gas builds up, and that's basically what forces the bullet down the barrel.
What are the two broad categories of handguns?
The two most common would be a revolver and a semi-automatic pistol.
Okay, and can you briefly describe the difference in those two types of handguns?
A revolver, if you've seen any of the old Western type movies, that's typically what they use. It has what's called a cylinder. And the cylinder has holes drilled through it, which are called chambers. So the cartridges go in the chamber, and then when you fire, that cylinder rotates, so it revolves. That's why I call it a revolver. So every shot is one cartridge in its own chamber. Semi-automatic pistol uses what's called a magazine, which is basically a separate component. The cartridges go in the magazine, loaded into the firearm, and then you have to chamber around. Usually you pull back on a slide, release it, go, let it go, and that chambers the topmost cartridge in the magazine into the chamber, and it's ready for firing. So every pull of the trigger for semi-automatic means one round is fired. So it's basically a machine that, it cycles as you're firing. Pull one, trigger pull, that fires a cartridge. Bullet goes down the barrel. Cartridge case is typically, if the firearm is working correctly, extracted and ejected out of the firearm, and then the cycle is repeated for every pull of the trigger.
You said a second ago that one of your duties and responsibilities is firearms identification. What exactly is that?
Firearms identification is a field of forensic science where you try to determine if a specific ammunition component was fired by a particular firearm. And how we do that is we have what's called a comparison microscope. Each examiner has one, and it's basically two microscopes. It's connected by an optical bridge system, so you look through it, and you can compare two samples simultaneously. You can compare a bullet with a bullet, and a cartridge case with a cartridge case, and you're looking for the markings that are on those items that were created during the firing process. So the various components of the firearm, when they come in contact with a bullet or a cartridge case, basically leave tool marks behind on those items. So those tool marks is what we're looking at to try to determine if it's fired by a particular firearm.
Okay. Approximately how many examinations have you performed in the fields of firearms identification?
Well, each case can have multiple examinations, so taking that into consideration, it would be thousands of actual examinations.
Have you ever testified as an expert in that field before?
Yes, ma'am.
How many times?
116 times, and that's with state and federal.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, the state seeks to qualify this witness as an expert in the field of firearms identification.
No, all right, I find this witness to be an expert in the field of firearm identification. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you some instructions on expert testimony when I charge you on the law. But all you need to know at this point in time is that typically a witness can only testify as to his or her personal observations, what they saw, what they heard, what they tasted, things of that nature. There is an exception for witnesses who are qualified as experts, which means that in addition to his personal observations, he can render an opinion in the field at which he's qualified as an expert. All right?
Thank you. Can you tell me in very general terms how you conduct your examination?
So depending on what types of evidence we get, if we get projectiles, bullets, we would basically, with all the evidence, we photograph it when we receive it, make sure everything that what we're supposed to get is what was received. And then we go into the examination process, photograph the evidence, start taking notes on our worksheets, noting conditions of evidence. With the bullets, first thing that we try to do is determine what sort of caliber those bullets may be. That's basically determined by mostly measuring the diameter of the bullet, if it's in good enough shape, weighing the bullet, and basically it's just overall characteristics come into play too to try to help determine what caliber it may be. With cartridge cases, it's basically the same thing, but the calibers would be listed on the cartridge case most of the time. If you have a firearm, then we test fire the firearm, make sure it's functioning correctly. Then we can compare test samples from when we test fire it to evidence cartridge cases or evidence bullets, and that's how we make our determinations.
What kind of equipment do you use to perform that examination?
Comparison microscope it would be what each examiner uses.
Okay. What types of conclusions are you able to draw?
So we have four basic types of conclusions. We have a positive, which means that it's basically a match. If you have a cartridge case or a bullet, it was fired by that particular firearm. We have a negative, which would mean it was not fired by that particular firearm. Then we have an unsuitable, which means that basically the evidence itself, the cartridge case or bullet, is too damaged or there's not enough markings on it suitable for identification. And then we have an inconclusive, which means it may be fired by the same firearm or potentially not fired by the same firearm. There are just not enough markings there to determine whether it was or not.
Okay. Does SLED have a method of tracking the movement of items of evidence from submission until the items are returned to the submitting agency?
Yes, ma'am.
And does that document contain the name of all individuals who handle an item of evidence?
Correct.
Was such a chain kept in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to approach with what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 141. Is that a copy of the SLED chain of evidence form for this case?
It appears to be.
How can you tell?
Well, it's got South Carolina Law Enforcement Division at the top, chain of custody, the lab number, which is our case number, prepared for release, and it's got everyone listed when the evidence is transferred.
Does that lab number match the lab number for the items of evidence you examined in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that document kept in the ordinary course of business?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time, the State would seek to admit Exhibit 141 in evidence.
Any objection?
I don't believe it's relevant based on earlier conversations we had about weapons.
What's the relevance?
It's bullets. They examined the bullets from the autopsy that were retrieved from the victim, Your Honor.
All right, I'll admit State's Exhibit 141 over defendant's objection.
Thank you. So we just talked about lab number L20-17755. Were you asked to examine some items for that lab number?
Yes, ma'am.
When you completed your examination, did you put those results in a report?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a report that you can refer to if you need it?
I do.
Okay. I just asked that you refer to it if you did and turn it over if you don't. Okay, were you given some projectiles to examine?
I was.
I'm approaching with what's been previously admitted into evidence of State's Exhibit number 139. Are those the items that you examined?
Yes, ma'am. These are projectiles. Some of them I can tell were fired bullets. Some of them were just pieces of lead. I can't tell if they were bullet or not.
Can you tell that those are the ones you examined there?
Yes, ma'am. They're in the same packaging as when I sealed it up. The original packaging, the items in there, and my seal date and initials.
Okay. Now let's turn to the fired projectiles from the autopsy. So what, if anything, were you able to conclude about them? Let's start with SLED item 40.
SLED item 40 is a piece of lead. Basically, again, I can't tell if it was part of a bullet or part of something else. Didn't have any marks of value on it, so it was unsuitable for identification with another item of evidence. That's basically all I could tell from that item.
Did the submitting agency indicate where that item was taken from?
It did. On the description of the item, it did have a location.
What was that location?
From victim's brain.
Would a bullet fired through a human skull suffer damage?
Yes, ma'am, it could. Whenever a bullet hits something, depending on what that object is, it could fragment, it could deform. It just depends on what it hits.
Is SLED item 40 consistent with the damage that could occur if a bullet is fired through a human skull?
Well, it could. Again, I can't tell if it's a bullet or not, but it would be consistent with.
Okay. Let's look at SLED items 37, 38, 39, and 41. Are those the other 4 items you were asked to examine?
Yes, ma'am. Those I could tell were fired bullets. There was enough material left on them that I could tell were actually fired bullets.
Okay. Could you tell what caliber they were?
Yes, ma'am. Based on their observable physical characteristics, again, construction, the weight, diameter, they are most consistent with being loaded into .22 long rifle caliber cartridges.
Okay. Now, I'm a layperson. You said a long rifle. Does that mean that those cartridges could only be fired by a rifle?
No, ma'am. Long rifle just denotes the designation or the name of that specific cartridge. Any firearm chambered for .22 long rifle can fire those cartridges.
Were you able to tell whether those fired bullets were fired from the same gun?
The results of those conclusions were inconclusive, basically due to damage and not enough markings, corresponding markings on those items, so it would be inconclusive. Can't tell if they were fired by the same gun or by more than one firearm.
Okay. Did the submitting agency indicated where those items were taken from?
They did.
And can you just tell me just go through each one?
Item 37 is listed as being from victim's chest. Item 38 listed as from victim's leg. 39 from victim's right pelvis. 41 from sacral area of victim.
Okay. Now you said you couldn't tell if they were fired by the same gun, but based on the rifling you examined, were you able to generate a list of firearms that could have fired the bullets you examined?
It's in my case file. We can generate a potential list of firearms that could have fired those bullets based on its characteristics. The list was extensive. It had a lot of makes and models on there. So I just included it in my case file and did not report it due to the length of that list.
Okay.
I don't see the relevance to this.
The witness can testify regarding whether or not this make and manufacturer of gun could have fired the bullets that he found. Thank you. I'm approaching with what's been marked as State's Exhibit 67. Can you examine that box first?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's just a box.
It is a box.
And can you tell what kind of firearm that box goes to?
This appears to be a factory container, factory packaging for a Ruger pistol.
Okay. And can you tell, based on the make and model of that firearm that that's a box for, whether or not that firearm could have fired the bullets that you examined?
Well, listed on the box itself, it does say caliber .22 long rifle, and Ruger was on the list of those potential manufacturers.
Okay, thank you. Please answer any questions the defense may have.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Your job has you always testifying for the state, right?
No, ma'am, or no, sir. Sometimes I testify, whoever needs my testimony, federal court, solicitor's office, defense, perhaps.
And in this case, after using all your procedures, the microscopes, your training, you didn't determine any gun that was a murder weapon.
Correct. We did not have the firearm that matched that firearm, or those fired or bullets.
So all the stuff you did proved that those weapons weren't murder weapons.
Objection, Your Honor. May we approve? May we, yeah.
You identified no murder weapon.
Correct.
Thank you. Go for it.
All right, ready, ready.
Court's industrial minor. No further questions.
All right, Judge.
Nothing defense, Your
All right, he's free to go.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, may we just see if our next proposed witness is here? Is that for Dr. Stack? Okay, so.
May I please the court, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, the state calls Becky Phillips.
Please raise your right hand and place your left hand on the Bible. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give the court in this case be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and then spell your last name for the court.
My name is Rebecca Phillips, Phillips.
Sergeant Phillips, where do you work?
I currently work at the Horry County Police Department.
How long have you worked at the Horry County Police Department?
Come December will be 25 years.
What's your current assignment there?
My current assignment is with the hiring and recruiting unit, so I'm a recruiter.
Okay. How long have you had that position?
Approximately 2 years.
What was your assignment before you got your current position?
I was assigned to the crime scene unit for 5.5 years.
What were some of your duties and responsibilities in the crime scene unit?
I started out as a senior detective, answering, going to crime scenes, being on call, collecting evidence, documenting the scene, and taking items to SLED.
When you, at the end of your tenure in crime scene, were you the sergeant in that department?
I was.
And what were some of your duties as the sergeant?
As a sergeant, I supervised individuals that were also on call. I would respond with them to answer the call-outs, help them process the scenes, document the scenes.
What sort of special training did you receive in order to work in crime scene investigations?
I've taken various classes and been to various schools to include crime scene processing, crime scene management, fingerprint analysis, palm analysis, and a lot of my training was on-the-job training.
Okay. So did you respond to a whole lot of crime scenes?
Yes.
Okay. How are cases assigned to crime scene investigators?
So we are assigned a week at a time to be on call, and it just happened to be whoever's on call gets that scene.
Okay. Were you assigned to investigate into an investigation to what was originally a missing persons investigation into the disappearance of Gregory Rice?
Yes.
How did you get involved in that investigation?
I was asked to respond and assist by Sergeant Heather Wilson, and we responded to the location with the case agent in order to assist.
Okay, you said the location. What location did you respond to?
Flint Lake Apartments, apartment D640.
What was the significance of that location?
That was the victim, Greg Rice's apartment.
Do you recall, and you may have said this and I missed it, approximately what date did you respond there?
October 16th, 2020.
At that time, was this still a missing persons investigation or a homicide investigation?
It was still a missing persons.
Okay. Is that apartment located in Myrtle Beach section of Horry County?
It is.
Did any other crime scene personnel respond with you that day?
Yes. Heather Wilson and Stephen Daly.
What about investigators? Did any investigators assist you that day?
Detectives were Detective Susie, Skellett, Edwards, and Daly. Yeah.
What information did you have prior to your search?
That the victim had been missing, was reported missing. Last time they were seen was on October 2nd.
Okay. Do you know if this was the first time that apartment was searched?
It was searched by the detectives prior to us getting there at a previous date.
Okay.
It was not the first time.
What specifically, well, what items were you told to look for? What were you looking for when you searched that apartment?
Any items of evidentiary value that could give us an idea to see where, or to give us an idea where the victim would be. He was still missing.
Okay. What about the condition of the apartment itself? Were you looking at that?
Yes.
And what did you note about that?
It was, when we do our investigations, we take pictures on the outside and the inside prior to our search. And where we enter the apartment, we notate and photograph the door and the door frame and the locking mechanism, and to see if there was any forced entry, and there was none.
Okay. Were you also looking for items of electronic evidence?
Yes.
Why was that?
Just to see if the victim was communicating with anybody prior to him going missing.
Okay. Let's get back to your arrival at this location, the victim's apartment. Can you just describe what it was, what it looked like?
It's an apartment complex, multi-unit or multi-building. His particular unit was a 2-story, but the apartments were a single story. It was a 2-bedroom, kitchen, living room. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a standard procedure that you follow when you begin processing a scene?
Yes.
What's the first thing you do?
We document with photography. I usually try to get a cross-street photograph or a sign.
May I approach, Your Honor? I'm approaching with what's been marked as State's Exhibit 72, 73, 74, 75, and 76. Will you look at these?
These are the photographs that I took that day of the search warrant of the victim's apartment, and the first photograph is the sign that is posted at the front before you go in.
And are these photographs fair and accurate? They look like what you actually saw that day?
Yes.
Your Honor, this time the state is seeking to introduce 72, 73, 74, 75, and 76 into evidence and publish them to the jury.
Any objection?
Without objection.
All right, State's Exhibits 72, 73, 74, 75, and 76 are admitted into evidence.
We have 72, please. Okay, this is the first picture, and you just described it.
Yes.
What does this show?
That is just the sign when you first go into the apartment complex.
Okay, can we have a 73, please? What is this one?
That is the front of the unit 640.
Okay.
And the front porch is to the right. The victim's unit is the front porch on the right.
So is that door you see there the victim's door, the door to his unit?
No.
No. Okay, so let's go to 74. Okay, how about this one?
That is the front of his unit, and it appears like the door is open at
Okay,
this
is that
point.
the door that goes
Yes.
into his unit? Okay. And can you see a little front porch area there too?
Yes.
Let's have 75. What is this?
That is just the side of the unit.
Okay. And then 76.
That is the locking or the door frame of the unit, Unit D.
And why did you take a picture of that?
That is just to document that there was no forced entry.
Okay. Okay, can you describe to me the interior of the apartment?
The interior of the apartment, when you first walk in, is the living room area. You go to the right is the kitchen and the laundry room area. And you go straight in is where the master bedroom is in the back, and then there's another bedroom on the left, and the bathrooms.
What about the condition of the apartment? What did it look like?
The apartment was cluttered, relatively clean. There was still trash in the trash can.
Did you see any signs of drug use?
No.
Did you see any signs of a struggle that you could tell?
No.
While you were there, did you search the master bedroom?
Yes.
And what, if any, thing did you locate there?
The master bedroom?
I'm sorry. No. Well, I can show her the evidence. Did you locate a number of items in the apartment that you see?
Yes.
After you finished searching and collecting items, did you do anything else to process that apartment?
I did. So we use a chemical called LCV, Leuco Crystal Violet. It's a chemical that when it reacts or sprayed on blood and blood fluid, it will turn purple. So that chemical attaches to the hemoglobin in the blood.
Okay. And in this case, did you find a color change anywhere in Greg Rice's apartment?
No.
What did that mean to you?
It meant and suggested that there was no crime of any altercation where bloodletting had occurred.
Okay. Did you at that point have any reason to look for a crime scene beyond the bounds of the apartment or the immediate area outside?
No.
Do you recall when you learned the location of the crime scene where the murder occurred?
December of 2024.
And how long after the date you went out there was that? Approximately.
4 years.
Does the passage of more than 4 years affect whether or not you're able to process a crime scene?
It does. The location, the number of years, from rain to other people to vehicles can all disturb a crime scene.
Okay. Did you also execute or help execute a search warrant into a 2014 Honda Civic that belonged to Greg Rice?
I did.
When did you do that?
October 19th?
And did you seize anything from that car?
No.
Why was nothing seized?
It did not appear that any altercation had occurred in the vehicle, and at that time we did not believe the vehicle was involved.
Okay. I'm going to direct your attention to October 23rd, 2010. Did you participate and execute a search warrant on Meagan Jackson's residence on that day?
I did.
And at that time, was this a homicide investigation or a missing persons investigation?
At that time, it was still a missing persons investigation.
And what was the address of that residence?
River 218.
Okay.
Is that?
And did you collect
Sorry.
anything relevant that day?
We collected digital media just to see if there was anything that could give us an idea or an investigative lead to where the victim had gone.
Moving forward to October 27th, 2020, did you execute a search warrant on a 2008 Honda Odyssey van that was often driven by Meagan Jackson?
I did.
Had you seen that car before?
Yes.
Why had you seen it before?
The vehicle had been used multiple times for body transport, and as part of the normal job that Meagan Jackson and I would end up at crime scenes, and she would be there to transport the body.
Did she also load the bodies into the van?
Yes.
Did the fact that that van was used for the purpose of transporting bodies affect your ability to process that van?
Yes. With the amount of bodies and just the utilization of that van and various reasons why the possibility of lots of mixtures of DNA blood bodily fluids in that van.
So was that particularly challenging?
Yes.
Okay, did you also execute a search warrant on Christopher Dontell's work car, a 2017 silver Ford?
It looked like that day in real life.
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, state 6 introduced 86, 87, 88, and 90 into evidence.
86, 87,
89 and 90.
All right, states exhibits 86, 87, 88, 89, and 90 are admitted into evidence without objection.
We have 86, please. And published, Your Honor. Thank you. Okay, so you described when you went to Gregory Rice's apartment that you began by taking overall photos. Is that?
Yes.
Do you do the same procedure every time?
Yes.
Okay. So what is this picture?
So that is the front of the funeral home.
Okay, let's go to 87.
That is the south end of the funeral home, and it shows the roll top door and the stack of the crematorium.
Okay, what, 88?
That is just another rear view of the funeral home showing the back door.
And 89?
That is the north side of the funeral home, another roll top garage door.
You can take that. Okay. And while you were out there, did you notice anything relevant to this investigation in the exterior of that building?
Yes.
Did you photograph and collect it?
Yes.
What did you notice?
There was a zip tie, black and color zip tie on the ground.
All right, this, I'm going to show you, can we have 90, please? Okay, is this a photograph of the zip tie you found that day?
Yes,
Did you collect that big zip tie?
I did.
And I've just handed you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 91. Is that zip tie you found that day?
Yes.
How can you tell?
It has my initials on it.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, the State seeks to introduce Exhibit 91 in evidence and publish to the jury.
You object. States exhibit 91 admitted into evidence.
After completing these overall photos and collecting this zip tie, did you move to the interior of that building?
I did.
Can you describe what it looks like when you first walk in there?
When you first walk in, there's a ramp that they use to bring the bodies in and out. And when you go through the back door, there's another ramp to the garage that contains 2 coolers to place bodies in different stages or processing through the funeral home. And straight through, you have a kitchen, you have all the business offices in the front of the funeral home, a kitchen, some viewing rooms and a chapel. And to the left, through the back door, you have a little holding room, then the embalming room where they process the bodies, and then further to the left, another ramp, and that's where the crematorium is.
Okay. Did you mention coolers? I believe you did.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Did you take a picture of those items?
I did.
I'm going to approach with what's been marked as State's Exhibit 102, 105, and 96. Let's start with 102 and 105. Are those photographs you took that day?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Are they fair and accurate representations of what it actually looked like?
Yes.
Your Honor, the State seeks to introduce 102, and 105 into evidence and published to the jury.
Any objection?
No.
State's exhibits 102 and 105 admitted into evidence without objection.
Can we have 102, please? What are we looking at in this photo?
That is a view of two coolers that are used to hold bodies.
So the bodies just go inside and close the door?
Yes.
Okay. Let's look at 105, please. Okay. What is this picture?
That is a view of a stack of cardboard boxes that they use to store some of the bodies in for various reasons.
Okay. Do you have to put them together first?
You have to fold them like a normal box.
Okay. And then to the left there, what is that you can see?
That's the cooler on the right.
Okay, is that the same cooler? Can we go back to 102, please? Just, I think you can see the boxes in 102 as well.
Yes, to the right.
Okay, so there they are.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Did you also locate some items of relevance at the Myrtle Beach funeral home, other than the zip tie and these photos?
I did.
Okay, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 96. Do you recognize that photograph?
Yes, that is my photograph.
And is that a fair and accurate representation of what you actually saw that day?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state seeks to introduce Exhibit 96 into evidence and publish to the jury.
Any objection?
It's the one I just showed.
All right, State's exhibit 96 admitted into evidence without objection.
We have 96 and published to.
All right.
Okay, why did you take this picture?
That is a picture in the embalming room of some sheets that were folded up in the cabinet.
And did anything strike you about those sheets?
Yes. The one you see there, marked my item 20, is a white sheet with a blue thread.
Why was that? Why did that catch your attention?
It is similar to the one that was recovered with the victim.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 132. Is that the sheet? Did you collect that sheet, first of all?
Yes, my initials and the date, and that is the sheet.
Okay. Your Honor, the state would like to admit Exhibit 132 into evidence and publish to the jury.
Any objection?
Yes, sir. I don't believe it should be introduced and accepted as proof of its similarity with any other apparel, clothing, blanket, sheets. It's not relevant.
All right. State's exhibit 132 admitted into evidence over the fitness of the charge.
Your Honor, I'm going to publish to the jury.
Turn it down.
Did you take any DNA swabs from anywhere in the funeral?
We did.
From where?
At the back door, at the ramp, on the wall behind the cooler, I believe in the embalming room.
Did any
There's
of
multiple.
those yield any information relevant to this case?
No.
And you've already described the particular challenges you faced in processing the body transport van. Were there any particular challenges you faced in processing the funeral home?
Yes, the same challenges, the way that the building is utilized through the process of multiple deceased people for various reasons.
Okay. I'm going to turn your attention you can take that to November 17, 2020. Did you on that date process items of evidence that had previously been seized?
I did.
Okay, when you process items, do you take photos of them?
I do.
we checked based on previous objection to a box. Other than that, we have no objection to 107.
All right. What is 106? That's what the prior witness testified to.
Yes, sir, it's the side one.
All right, State's Exhibit 106 admitted into evidence over defendant's objection. State's Exhibit 107 admitted into evidence without objection.
Okay, I'm going to first show you what's been marked as States 106.
That is my photograph
Okay, and what does
in the
that-
lab.
Can we put 106, may we publish these to the jury?
Yes.
106 up on the Tuesday. And we've seen this. Do you know where that item was seized from?
Meagan Jackson's house.
Okay. And were you able to locate a serial number on that box that goes with the gun?
Yes.
And just to be clear, was there a gun in that box?
No.
Okay. And based on the serial number, did law enforcement, were you able to perform a trace on that gun?
Yes.
And how do you do that?
We sign into what's called E-Trace, which is through the ATF, and we notate the information on the box, but we notate that it was a box only, and it provides or can provide the purchaser or owner information.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked and admitted as State's Exhibit 107. Is that a certified copy of that trace performed on that gun?
It is.
Okay. And if you don't mind, who does it show is the purchaser of that gun?
Gregory Vincent Rice.
And were you able to perform a search to determine if that gun had ever been reported stolen?
Yes.
Was it ever reported stolen?
No.
And again, where was it found? The
Meagan
box.
Jackson's house, residence.
In addition to everything else we've talked about, you did quite a lot, were you also tasked with taking certain items of evidence to SLED, the State Law Enforcement Division?
I was.
And what does that entail? How do you do that?
We decide what we feel needs to go to SLED, and we request further processing. I will sign out the items from evidence, place them in my vehicle, and immediately travel to SLED in Columbia to be turned over to their evidence division.
Okay, and are those items, when you take them to SLED, in your sole custody and control?
Yes.
I'm just going to show you quickly what's been previously admitted into evidence as 141. There's some orange tabs on here because you did a lot of stuff. Do you mind just looking at that and verifying that you actually transported those items to SLED?
Solicitor, I do not see my name on this one.
It's just the orange ones. I'm sorry. There's a lot. I hope they help you.
Submitted by. Oh, that's returned. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
got
submitted
it.
by,
There you
I'm
go.
sorry. Yeah,
Rebecca
submitted by
Phillips.
me.
Okay, sorry.
I was
Let's
looking
just
for the
look at that one.
signature.
All right, only one can talk at a time because the court reporter can't kick you, but,
Sorry.
So my name is in there, submitted by. I was looking for the signature, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Thank you, Sergeant Phillips. Please answer any questions that offense may have.
How you doing?
Good.
Good. You were just talking about showing pictures of Myrtle Beach Funeral Home.
Yes, sir.
When were you out there, looking at the Myrtle Beach Funeral Home?
The 17th, I believe, October
What year?
2020.
Okay. So at that time, were you investigating it as a possible scene of the crime?
I was.
Okay. And you've introduced the object that you took from there, you've gone over and told us that's exhaustive, and you don't have anything else that you collected there.
I did collect other items, but they are not the items that are submitted to court at this time.
Okay. So these are the only ones that have been put into evidence, right?
All of the items are submitted to evidence.
Okay. Have you investigated another crime scene in connection with this issue?
No.
Okay. You investigated a missing person in Mr. Rice's apartment, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. But you didn't do any investigation after the quote crime scene changed. You heard about that, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. So you didn't go out to that area and conduct any kind of search in December of 2024?
No, I was not assigned the crime scene at the time.
Okay. Now, isn't it true that DNA lasts a long time?
It depends on where it's left, what it's left on, and the weather.
Well, they dug up bodies that still have it, right? That's true.
I'm not a DNA expert.
All right, thank you.
That goes towards John.
all right.
I think in your report, was there a toothbrush that you collected?
There was.
Okay. And you submitted that to SLED?
I did.
Your Honor, maybe approach.
The items that you collected that were transported to SLED
Yes, sir.
were done by you personally?
What do you mean by done? Collected by?
Taken?
Oh,
and
taken.
handed off to the...
Yes.
That you did it? You handed it to...
That's what the report says submitted.
But you remember doing that, right?
That was 5 years ago, or close to 5 years ago, but that's why I used the documentation in the chain.
Well, I understand. It's a problem for all of us for length of time, but you don't remember delivering those items personally.
I've delivered tons of items to SLED. If the report says that I submitted it and I took it to SLED, then I did.
Was Dudley involved in this?
She is the supervisor over evidence.
Did she
Not
go
sure.
with you? I'm sorry. Did she go with you to SLED?
No.
Your Honor, maybe approach again.
All right. Matter of law, I need to take up with the attorney, so I'm going to excuse you back in the jury room for just a few minutes. And I'll tell you why we do this. It's not that we're trying to hide anything from you or keep anything from you. But as I told you in the opening charges, you and you alone decide the facts of this case. And you decide those facts based upon the testimony of witnesses and any other exhibits that are introduced into evidence. I decide the law. Well, there's an issue of law that has come up. When I discuss the law with the attorneys, it often requires us to reference factual issues. But what I say and what the attorneys say is not evidence. So we don't want you to be influenced by anything that we say when we discuss the law. We don't want that to influence your decision as to what the facts are. And that's why we excuse you back in the jury room. In any event, it'll give you a little break. Leave your notepads in the jury box. Do not discuss the case.
Your Honor, and I am, if I am incorrect on this, because I am the last person that would ever even jump up to any kind of conclusion on this kind of things. But if I am correct in hearing what Captain Phillips said, all evidence or all items they collect are sent to SLED. I believe that was read, I believe she testified to that. If that is true, then that means that the toothbrush that she listed would have also gone to SLED. She would have submitted it. We then had a little quick discussion. He asked if the toothbrush went to SLED. He asked if Lori Dudley took the toothbrush to SLED. Captain Phillips said, no, man, we don't have to answer you, right? She said no. We can read it all back. I have something on my phone that says otherwise. And that's the problem. Well, the problem is I really would not wish to air that out in public. And the fact that I don't want to make accusations because I know this person to be a very good person. And I think this is just a slip up, but I want to make sure it is noted because I have been.
Well, I haven't seen your phone. You're going to have to address it.
Yes,
If you want
sir.
to put it in the record, you're going to have to, for the court to address it, it's going to have to be put in the record.
Ma'am,
May I?
may I have a brief moment of indulgence?
Yes, you can take whatever time you need, but I can't address anything that's not part of the record. in this
Well, Your
case.
Honor, I believe I can clear this.
No.
I understand. I understand.
Your Honor,
May I approach? Your Honor?
I'm
I'll be happy.
not going to be looking at any phones or anything
Yes, sir.
like that.
The chain is right here.
I understand.
But he's saying he's
I'm
got
saying
something
that
on his
that's not
phone
the
that is
problem.
But
completely
this
different.
chain matches what he's saying, and that's not what the witness testified to. What I asked the witness
I
was
heard
this.
what you testified to.
Yeah, Your Honor, and
Now, he's saying, are you saying what's on your phone is what they have put in
it's the same thing,
the
right?
evidence?
If we were to believe what the testimony has been said so far, Your Honor, then she says that she collected all of the evidence and sent it, took it, personally delivered to Rick.
Please read it back when I
Read it back,
asked
'cause
her what she said.
Hold it. On your phone, is that what she has?
Are you talking the toothbrush?
Now, when I say what she has, so we have a clear record, what is that? That's State's Exhibit what?
This is State's Exhibit 141. Item 1 on the SLED chain of custody is one heat seal pouch containing a toothbrush of Gregory Rice Alternative Standard. It was submitted by Lori Dudley of the Horry County Police Department. When I questioned this witness, I handed her this document which has a number of orange tabs on it. I said, please look at the tab items. You took a lot of items to SLED. Will you verify that you took those items to SLED? And that's what she did. She never testified that she took a toothbrush to SLED or that she took every item of evidence collected in this case to SLED. That would be absurd.
Read it back.
She
Yeah,
said the tab
I heard
items,
her, I understood that she said she took the items to SLED.
certain items of evidence.
She said toothbrush.
She said toothbrush.
So we got a problem.
Well, I mean, you can
She
bring.
said that she submitted, I'm
We
sorry, I'm
can
not
read
trying
it
to talk
back.
over your honor. She said she submitted the items into evidence, not that she took them to SLED. And I think you should read it back because that's what I heard.
All right, let's put back what she just testified to under cross-examination. Now, Mr. Britton, when he came back up, they took a little break. And
Is after I asked the approach, Your Honor.
Tommy Britton and Case Britton talked, so start right there.
a toothbrush? Did you collect?
There was.
And you submitted that to SLED?
I did.
Maybe first.
All right, that's fine. She said she submitted it to SLED.
Well,
And that's because he doesn't say that at all.
well, Your Honor,
Well, what are you asking me to do? I mean, we're in cross-examination.
Yes, sir.
You can bring out any discrepancy.
Yes, sir.
On cross-examination.
And Your Honor, the reason I wanted to approach this topic is because it's not obvious. And unfortunately, I'm trying to abide by what we need to do here so we can keep on page. But that information came solely to me. I do not believe that it has been sent to me in any kind of way to read. But the problem for me, Your Honor, personally, is I have a complaint filed against me already in this case, prior. I don't know how to address that without bringing up everything, because everything that gets done is going to be scrutinized for me for later. Now, that has nothing to do with any bearing on this case. But I got some information that if I don't bear out, or at least figure out what the chain of custody has to do with it, I don't feel very...
I still don't understand what you're asking me to do, Mr.
we're not
Director.
admitting the toothbrush.
Can I explain it?
I'm talking to Mr. Director right
Sorry, Your
now.
Honor.
Please quit interrupting, okay?
Okay, I'm
All
sorry.
right. I still don't understand what you're asking me to do.
Judge Culberson, I believe that they are trying to introduce some evidence in a backwards way.
Let's back up.
Yes, sir.
Let's start off. I'll let you explain. But starting off, what are you asking me to do? Suppress evidence,
Yes, sir.
strike the testimony,
Yes, sir.
dismiss the case, or what?
Suppress evidence, strike the testimony, and dismiss the case.
All right, and that's based upon what?
Information of an improper chain of custody based on a belief text I have that Ms. Dudley delivered the toothbrush to SLED, and that Captain Phillips is now testifying and just did that she delivered the toothbrush to SLED. This case has been filled with the crime scene went here. This is here. I haven't had a strand of evidence connecting except that it looks like they're having an affair. Now we're going to have somebody testify that she delivered a toothbrush, but she didn't. And she's an officer of the court, of the law.
All right. I'm denying your motion.
Yes, sir.
Still in cross-examination.
Yes, sir.
You got the exhibit with the chain of custody. She just testified that she delivered it. You can cross-examine with the chain of custody to show any discrepancies in her testimony.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Anything from the state before we bring the jury in?
No, sir.
Anything from the defense? All right, let's bring the jury in. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Make sure you have your own notepad to follow the case. Brittany, we deal with cross-examination.
Officer, you realize the significance of chain of custody documents? Do you?
I do.
And I believe you testified earlier, you don't have any personal recollection of delivering these items to SLED.
Some of the items, I do not have the personal recollection of that particular day.
Okay. So you based your testimony on reading a report, not on your personal recollection.
And the chain. We can review the chain. I would like, may I have the copy of the chain? If he wants to.
No, this is cross-examination.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
All right, go ahead.
If he's going to ask me specifically, I'd like to have it. Thank you, sir. You may ask your question again, please, sir.
I've already asked you all on that.
Okay.
You don't personally remember the transport that SLED?
No, I used the report.
Right.
That's fine.
That is all.
All right,
Thank
read
you,
it
sir.
right.
Briefly, ma'am. Sergeant Phillips. I'm gonna hand you the chain, but I have to stand up there beside you and look at it.
Oh, that's fine.
Your Honor, I'm gonna approach with Exhibit 141. All right, we just heard testimony. I believe the defense asked you specifically about a toothbrush.
Yes, I collected a toothbrush
And where did you collect that toothbrush?
from the victim's residence to use as an alternate standard.
Okay, I believe the defense also asked you some questions about items you took to SLED. Can you
Yes.
tell me, did you take the toothbrush to SLED? It's SLED item 1.
No, Lori Dudley took it to SLED and put it in the lockers there.
So Mr. Britton just asked you, do you have a personal, so first of all, let's start out. I just questioned you. You did a whole lot of stuff in this case. Is that correct?
I did.
Did you collect, how many items of evidence do you think you collected?
Hundreds.
And do you have a specific recollection of collecting each item of evidence?
I do not.
What do you rely on to determine whether you collected an item of evidence?
My reports in the chain,
Okay. Why do police departments keep chain of custody?
just to say where the evidence goes and that nobody has tampered with it.
Does it also identify each person who may have participated or touched each item of evidence?
Yes,
Do you have an independent recollection of collecting each item of evidence?
not each item, but I utilize my placard numbers and photographs.
Do you have an independent recollection of transporting each and every item of evidence you collect to SLED when you transport it?
No,
How do you recall when you transfer something to SLED?
I use their chain.
Okay. When I questioned you earlier and asked you to look at the orange tab items, are the orange tab items the items you submitted to SLED?
Yes,
And I believe that you had a difficult time kind of determining that because it's,
I didn't see my name right away.
okay. Is that a voluminous document?
Yes,
And then the defense asked you specifically if you took SLED item 1, the toothbrush to SLED, and what did you say?
I said I had, but I submitted it not transport. So I collected it, and when we say submitted it to SLED, I request it. But for their verbiage, they use submit.
Okay, so if there's a difference between your recollection and the chain of custody, which one is correct?
The chain.
Okay. And when you were answering the questions put to you by the defense, did they hand you that chain to look at?
No.
No further questions.
All right, you may say that. Discussion.
Oh, you know what I mean? This witness be released from her stand.
You need that?
No objection.
All right, she's free to go.
Can I take a second break real quick, just to run the restroom?
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll take another 10-minute break. We'll bring you back in just a minute. Leave your notepads in the jury box.